which is a place where professionals can come and share ideas and thoughts on various topics. So me and Dan sort of hit it off, had some really good conversations. So really happy to have Dan here. He knows what he's talking about. So without further ado, it's 6 o'clock. So we're going to get into this presentation. So we've got the key presenters. We're going to quickly talk about Tortoise Git and Sitecore, and then over to Dan, and Dan's going to go through Sitecore PowerShell extensions. Okay, and then we've got question and answer session. So if you've got any questions or queries, put them in the chat channel, and then we'll end. So we're estimating to take around about an hour to half an hour. Okay. So yeah, Dan, would you like to add any more about yourself as well for those watching at home?
No, I just yeah, so I could just say that I'm I'm a software developer continuously trying to learn and improve my skills, and thanks for giving me this opportunity.
No worries. And yeah, in terms of myself, I'm also a developer. I've been working on Sitecore quite recently, and before that, I was working on .NET. So yeah, really happy to be here again. So yeah, on to the first topic. So utilize Git with Sitecore projects. Over the course of my career, I've used many different Git tools, and they've all had advantages and pros and cons to them. Git, for people that might not be aware of what Git is, Git is a tool which allows you to track changes to files, configuration files, front-end files, CS files in your project. So it's a very powerful tool, and I've used Git in every single project I've been involved in. Okay. Um, Now, Tortoise Git is the tool that I'm going to be talking about in this presentation, and it's a very powerful tool because it enables you to see very quickly at a glance changes to your Sitecore project or files in your Sitecore project. Green represents files that have not changed, whereas red represents those changes. And when you're developing in Sitecore projects, um, you've got to be very cautious and very careful about what files you're changing. Therefore, and because of that reason, I find it very useful to place the web root under version control. That's right, the web root. I know that we do not, even though I have it under control only locally. I'm not um, um, storing the web root on a public repo or anything like that. But I just put the web root on version control locally so that when I'm publishing files from my source folder on into my web root, I can see what files are going across in that file system publish. And with that knowledge and with that understanding of what's actually being changed, it enables me as a developer to sort of know what's important, know which files are not important. So how to install Tortoise Git? First of all, you need to have Git command line installed, and you can go to this URL to install it. I install it with the default options. However, you can change it based on your requirements. And then go to your web root of your project. The web root is typically or usually C inetpub ww root and then the name of the project. So we want to place the web root under version control. So once you have Tortoise Git installed, go to your web root via the command line or the command prompt, and then run the below commands in the following order. Okay. So you want to do a git init, which basically initializes the repository, a git add all or git add asterisk. That will add everything to Git, and then you want to do git commit dash m for message, and you can give it a message. I've called it vanilla. You can call it first commit or whatever you fancy. Okay. Once you do that, you'll see that all of your files will light up with the green tick. That's because it's your first commit. So of course nothing will have changed because it's your first commit. Yeah. Then continue to work on your Visual Studio project, and then once you're ready and you do a publish from your project root to your web root, you'll see loads of red ticks. Okay. So here we've got a red explanation mark on app config folder, the bin directory, the views directory, and the web config directory. Yeah. We expect changes to happen to the following files and directories. So we expect it to happen to the directories I just named. However, if you receive a file system change, or if you see another file that's changed, so if any of these other files have changed back here, that's good for you to know, because it might not be important for that to be across, or it might be a mistake, or it might be a human error. So you can whittle that out straight away. Um, but we're expecting changes to the web config because we do transformations depending on different environments, dev, UAT, production. We're expecting changes to the bin because we're compiling DLLs, or we might be using third-party DLLs. We're expecting changes to the views because front-end developers might be working on them, or we as well might be working on them. And we're expecting changes to the app config because that's where all of our transformation files are stored. We don't anytime you want to do something custom, we add a file to the app config. So the app config stores all of our custom configurations. Okay, so we're expecting changes in those areas, but sometimes, from my experience, there's been other random bits of changes, and if you're not aware, or if you just sort of ignore those changes, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it can cause problems further down the road. Okay. So to sort of bring it all together and sort of to conclude everything, version control is extremely important. If changes to config and source files are not tracked and monitored, then the task of onboarding new developers becomes more challenging and costly. So thank you. Thanks. So now I'm going to hand over to Dan, and he's going to be talking about Sitecore PowerShell and extensions. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Isambad. So yeah, Sitecore PowerShell extension. So, um, I was tasked with something a couple months ago, was to look at some tools that were really um, help us out with speeding up development. So I was looking on GitHub, and I was looking for something. I was just researching a variety of different tools out there, and I came across this project which I thought was pretty interesting. Um, so Sitecore PowerShell Extensions, or SPE, is a development
Dan,
accelerator module.
Dan, sorry to interrupt, but do you think you can come closer to your microphone? I just had
Yeah,
someone say that they like what you're saying, but so one viewer mentioned that they just couldn't hear.
yeah,
Okay, that's
sure.
okay.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, I'll monitor the feedback and let you know. Yeah, please continue. Thanks.
Okay, sorry about that. Um, so yeah, Sitecore PowerShell Extensions. It's a productivity tool. So like I said, um, if I was doing some research for a project, and I came across this on GitHub. So I just went into the search and just typed in Sitecore, and a bunch of tools came back. This one was pretty well rated, so I figured I'd check it out. And I've used it, and it's really helped me develop quicker. Um, so it's basically an inline CLI, or command line environment, and a scripting environment for automating tasks. And it's built on the Sitecore process, so you could easily access items with the PowerShell syntax. Next slide. So what's distributed with SPE? It's got a variety of different things in here. I've only listed a portion of it, but SPE is included. So the core is what we would use for um, for our tasks and automating our tasks. But you also have a background session manager. You have a tool that allows you to create your site map from all of your pages, and it also includes some cool things like a unit tester, to allow you to unit test your Sitecore scripts. Um, there's also some things you could do as far as like indexing on demand, your memory library maintenance. So it's got a variety of different things. So it's not just an IDE. There's a lot of different tools that are included with it.
Yeah.
So what does it take to install? So there's not that many, considering it's a module. There's not that many things that it's requiring. Um, so the requirements that they're stating is at least Windows 7 or greater, .NET Framework 4.5.2 or higher, and then the Windows Management Framework 3, which contains PowerShell. They ask you to execute an execution policy, I guess for remote signing, but that's pretty much it. So you have four requirements or four things that are needed, and it'll get you going to using SPE. So installing the module is very simple. You basically go to the GitHub page. So you search for SPE or Sitecore PowerShell extensions. Um, you come across the page on GitHub. You go to the release page, and then you download the latest module. And I'll go over that in the next slide, depending on which version of Sitecore you're needing. Um, but the latest version is 6.3, so that covers everything up until the latest version of Sitecore, which is 10.2. And that's it. Pretty much just download the um, you download the module from GitHub. And then you go into your Sitecore start menu, and then go to your installation wizard. It'll ask you to upload your the module, so you just upload it, and that's pretty much it. And once you've installed all it, there'll be a variety of different places where you'll be able to use the tool. Next slide. Okay, version compatibility. So they stopped supporting Sitecore 7 in version 5. So the older versions are using everything pre 5.0. I think you could use up to Sitecore 9.2 for 5.0. And then after that, everything is fairly new. So 9.3 and higher. The latest version is 6.3 of SPE, and that contains all of the that could be run on any version up until 7 of Sitecore. And then once you installed it, you have 4 locations where the console can be open. 2 of them are visible from your start menu, and the other one is in your development tools or reporting tools. But it gives you the ability to access the PowerShell console in those locations. So what can we do with it? You could do a variety of different things with it. Since we're trying to automate tasks, I mean, we could even do trivial things. So I've listed a couple of examples here. Get media. If you want to get a media item, basically all you're doing is you're just using basic PowerShell scripting. You're assigning an item, your site name, and your site, and just provided the item ID that you're wanting. So in this case, we're just looking for a specific item based on its ID, Sitecore ID, and basically you use this statement here, and we would return the actual URL of of the item. So this can be useful, and I've used this before. Um, if you're trying to determine absolute or relative paths within your application, um, if you have a specific node or set of items that require links, or you're not really sure what the actual um, location is, this would be a good way to handle that. Another example would be workflow. So you could also, if you have the ID, determine the workflow um, of your site. So that could be useful if you're dealing with other people in the business that or if you want to verify once you publish an item, what happens next. This allows you to understand what happens once an item changes. And another thing you could do with it is run JavaScript. So this is a neat little thing. Is if you don't have access to, let's say, the dev tools or a utility to run your scripts, in this section you could just use your JavaScript. If you have custom JavaScript, you could test it here. So as you're working on other things, I've used this before. It's fairly useful. Throw in your JavaScript syntax, and then you could invoke it, and then it actually does it returns. So you could do a little testing on your JavaScript. Uh, any type of scripts that you're working on, and I found that fairly useful to use. So one last thing to wrap it up. The reason I chose this product was it's fairly easy to use. As I've gone into my presentation, I I've described that it's easy to use, and it's gets you up running, and you're using basic PowerShell scripting, which is very well documented. Um, so if you'd like to learn more, you could jump on GitHub and search for Sitecore PowerShell. Um, they also have a main site that you could go to, but it's very well documented. They have an active community, and they can be reached on YouTube or their Slack channel. Um, and they have training modules as well. So I thought that was really neat. So here are a couple of resources for SPE. And yeah, if you have time, just feel free and download it and play around with it. And I believe that it'll definitely increase your productivity and allows you to be a more well-rounded developer.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dan, for that. Do you have any more closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, that should be it, Isambot. I think that's pretty much it. I think I've gone into it, but yeah, it's a great tool, very easy to use, and it could definitely be a part of anybody's tool belt as they're working.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of me, I'm just going to give closing thoughts. Sitecore PowerShell is definitely a tool which